There was a time when the middle class meant stability, living in a modest home, driving a decent car, and going on the occasional vacation. You weren't rich, but you were able to do a lot of the things that you wanted to do. However, nowadays, the middle class is getting squeezed. More and more people are working hard, making good decisions, yet still struggling to afford the things that used to be attainable by the middle class. And in this video, I want to talk about 7 things the middle class is now struggling to afford and give some possible solutions to help you stay ahead. 1. Home ownership. The symbol of the middle class and stability is home ownership. Most people want to be homeowners, and it's the biggest source of wealth for ordinary people. However, it seems like home ownership has become less and less attainable over time. For example, in 1984, the average home cost 3.5 times a person's income, and now in 2025, it is 5.8 times a person's income. Now is one of the most expensive times in history to become a homeowner, with both mortgages and interest rates high. However, ironically, another terrible time to become a homeowner was in the 1980s. Because although the cost of a home was less, interest rates were through the roof, peaking at 18.63%, which also made housing unaffordable. The truth is, home ownership has never been a given. It has never been an automatic part of being in the middle class, but it requires patience, planning, and perseverance. And although home ownership might not be realistic for many right now, that doesn't mean it never will be. The market ebbs and flows. But the percentage of the population that is homeowners has remained pretty stable over time, peaking and falling at the time when banks were giving out mortgages to people who couldn't afford them. And so if your dream is to become a homeowner someday, it is still possible if you take the steps now to save up for a large down payment, build up your credit score, and be patient for the right opportunity to come. The second thing the middle class is now struggling to afford is higher education. College is commonly viewed as the path to the middle class lifestyle, getting you access to a good job with a good income. However, the reality that many graduates face nowadays looks very different. They graduate with the average of $29,500 in student loan debt and their degree not translating to a job. Many people in my generation are strapped with high payments of student loan debt that is forcing them to start a career they might not want to get into and delay things like home ownership and starting a family. Many people are struggling to afford a higher education, and what can we do about that? Well, I think it's important to first know that a college degree isn't a necessary step to getting a good job. However, if you do want to go to college, I still believe that it is 100% possible for many people to graduate debt-free, because that is exactly what I did. I graduated Georgia State University in 2017 with no student loan debt. And the steps I took were very simple. I lived at home to save on room and board. I went to community college for the first 2 years, which was basically free. I went to a cheaper state college after, and I took advantage of government scholarships like the Hope and Pell Grant that covered about 90% of my costs. And although these options aren't available to everyone, I think that many people take on a bunch of student loan debt because they want that college experience and pay a lot for room and board, go to an expensive private school, and use loans to fund other things in their life. Getting a higher education isn't the only path to the middle class. However, I do believe that going to college helps you in many other ways outside of just getting a job. Because college teaches you commitment, organization, and independence. I believe that college just makes you a more well-rounded person. Not that you can't get that outside of college, but even in 2025, if you want to get a higher education without taking on a bunch of debt, I believe that it is still possible. You just have to be resourceful, realistic, and make sacrifices at that phase of your life. 3. Retirement. Another thing that many middle-class people are struggling to afford nowadays is retirement. And one of the huge reasons is because retirement used to be a three-legged stool, where one leg was Social Security, another was employer pensions, and the other was personal savings. But over time, the pension was replaced by the 401k, and due to the high cost of living, many people don't have personal savings, leaving many retirees 100% reliant on Social Security. 40% of retirees rely solely on Social Security for their retirement income. Retirement is coming more and more out of reach for the everyday person. And so what can we do to be able to afford retirement? Well, I think that retirement is still very realistic for many people. But instead of relying on your government or your employer to make it happen, it now falls on you. And so you need to start planning early. Take advantage of your employer 401k matches. Work on keeping your expenses low so you can save more, and educate yourself on investing. Retiring comfortably is still an option for many people, but nowadays it requires being much more intentional in your own individual life. And that is not ideal for a society, as many people are going to get left behind. But if you focus on preparing and planning at this phase of your life, you can secure a comfortable future. For groceries. Since the pandemic, food prices have soared. According to the USDA, from 2020 to 2024, the price of food has risen by 23.6%. It's nearly impossible to go to the grocery store spending under $100. Food inflation is squeezing the middle class, whether that's the price of eggs, meats, or chips surging. And what can we do about this? Well, I think that there are many things that you could do to lower your grocery bill. Like stop buying expensive junk food, create a shopping list, go to discount stores, buy in bulk, use the freezer, learn to cook, and eat out less. And although that won't solve all your problems, it will allow you to lower your food bill and be able to afford a little bit more food. Next, cars. According to Kelley Blue Book, the average new car buyer paid $49,740. Cars are expensive, and a high car payment can consume a huge chunk of your budget. If you're making the high salary of $60,000, then that's 20% of your budget, and that's not including insurance, gas, maintenance, or registration fees. For something that is a symbol of freedom and mobility, cars often take away a lot of your freedom and a lot of your mobility because you're in the office working to pay it off all day. But what can we do about this to afford a car? Well, first, don't fall into the new car trap and get a used car. Second, work your way up getting a POS car, a slightly nicer one, and then a nicer, reliable one that you can afford. And third, don't look at cars as status symbols, but as a mode of transportation. Car ownership is still possible for the middle class, but in order to do it, you have to be intentional and realistic, because if you're not, then you'll end up getting something that you can't afford and that'll consume all other areas of your budget. 6, health insurance. Here in the greatest country on earth, the healthcare industry is so messed up. We pay more on healthcare than any other developed nation by a landslide. But healthcare really destroys people financially. According to the American Journal of Public Health, 66.5% of bankruptcies are tied to a medical debt in the United States. In my opinion, the American healthcare industry is no different than Mexican drug cartels. The only difference is one is illegal, being chased by the government, while the other is legal, running the government. And honestly, I don't think there is much that we can do about this. The health insurance companies are running this country. The only thing we can do is to take action so we don't have to use our health insurance, like eating right, exercising, and staying in a good mental state. And even if you take those actions, you still gotta pray that you never get sick. God bless the private industry. And the final thing the middle class is struggling to afford is being carefree. We're living in a moment of time where the middle class in America is shrinking. I mean, according to Pew Research, in 1971, the middle class consisted of 61% of society, while in 2021, it only consisted of 50% of society, losing 11%. However, when you look at this percentage deeper, you see out of that 11% lost, 8% moved to the upper class and 3% moved to the lower class. The middle class is still 50% of society, but we're sort of moving to this two-class society where you're either doing very good or very bad. And for a long period of time, you could work a single job at a company for your entire career and afford a middle-class lifestyle and retire comfortably. You could be pretty carefree and still have a good life. However, nowadays, life is a lot more complex. And most of the responsibilities to get ahead are falling solely on the individual, which is leaving some behind. And so my final word to you is this. We're living in a moment of time where being in the middle class no longer guarantees stability. Life requires more strategy, more planning, and more resilience than ever before. You can't just coast through life and expect that somehow things are just going to magically fall in place like maybe you could in the past. But that doesn't mean that you can't live a good quality of life in 2025. Now more than ever, you just have to be more intentional and focus on the things you can control, like your spending, your habits, your mindset, your goals, and your expectations. And now more than ever, it's important to be proactive and resourceful in your life because more and more of the responsibility in 2025 is falling on the individual. And those are the 7 things that the middle class is now struggling to afford. And with that, muchas gracias. Que tengan un buen día. Nos vemos, chicos.